BlockTV. I'm Ron Friedman, and it's now time for HODL with HEDL, a chance to zoom out for a moment and take a wider perspective on some of the issues that dominate the crypto markets as a whole. And to guide us on this journey of discovery, we're joined, as we are every week, by Bitcoin influencer and thought leader, talking to Dan Held. He's the Director of Business Development at Kraken. Hey, Dan, great to see you.
As always, thanks for having me, guys.
Quite a week. We're seeing the markets in the red, at least today, at least for the time being. But if we want to zoom out a bit, a blog post you wrote recently. Now, everybody's familiar with the term Bitcoin maximalism. You have toxic maximalist, you have a regular maximalist, but you're introducing a new idea, a new concept, and we're calling it Bitcoin minimalism. And it has nothing to do, or nothing directly to do with your bullishness in the market, right?
That's right. I've been in the space for 7 years, and this article was more about touching on the cultural values of Bitcoiners. A lot of times we hear the term Bitcoin maximalism, and I think it's kind of a loaded term. So the origins of that term, by the way, started with Vitalik Buterin from Ethereum. Vitalik is as equal a brilliant marketer as he is an engineer. Vitalik knew that the most critical individuals in the room, who were also right about the scalability of Ethereum or the viability of Ethereum, hence why he's doing Ethereum 2.0. He knew that the most critical voices in the room had to be marginalized. And so that's where he coined the term Bitcoin maximalism. That term started to represent something that Bitcoiners, something around where Bitcoiners were conservative Luddites who weren't open-minded enough. Not that they were critical, rational thinkers who thought, hey, wait a second, this blockchain technology isn't a one-size-fits-all for everything, and there's obviously some trade-offs involved. This was highly effective in Silicon Valley. In Silicon Valley, being conservative is extremely
You're talking political conservatism, yeah.
But same with open-mindedness. So Silicon Valley is the most open place in the world not to speak your mind. To be clear, there's a certain amount of acceptable sort of topics and opinions to have in this out here. And when it comes to being conservative overall or not being open to the latest new tech, that is a violation of like the core principles of Silicon Valley. So Vitalik was very effective in terms of marginalizing Bitcoiners in Silicon Valley. Hence why Ethereum was so popular over the last few years, which was really disappointing. And so I wrote this as a way to expand on the cultural values of Bitcoiners and to really kind of like reframe it in the new light, that Bitcoin is really about minimalism, not maximalism. It's not about being closed-minded, it's about being open-minded, but choosing to select different opinions based on different frameworks. And so, some of the core fundamental topics of the article, one is about creating more and consuming less. When you buy and hodl Bitcoin, you're not just hodling Bitcoin to participate in a speculative bubble. To hodl Bitcoin, it requires you to not consume today. Instead of taking that $100 that you put in Bitcoin, you then took that $100, if you were to consume it today, you would then go buy it on groceries or a movie ticket or something else.
Lamborghinis.
Lamborghinis, yeah, exactly. So, Bitcoin, to buy it represents a willingness to reduce consumption today and buy a really volatile asset because you believe in it. And by consuming less, you provide more goods and services for everyone around today. That's why saving is such a good thing. By saving, you take your capital today that you could have consumed with, and then you invest it into something that produces more goods. It also reduces the amount of goods or services that you consume relative to everyone else, which means there's more goods and services available for everyone. Bitcoin as well is digging deeply into what matters. By hodling Bitcoin, it makes you challenge a lot of assumptions that you had about the government and economics and why the world works the way it does. It makes you really dig at the core root of purpose in our lives. Who has power over me and why do they have power over me? Why has something been done this way for all these years? Who are the real intelligent people in the room who look at Bitcoin and go, okay, wait a second, that might be something big, or who are the ones that dismiss it immediately? And so that's where, Bitcoin minimalism is about a flight to quality. It's this don't trust, verify attitude that permeates not only your investment in Bitcoin and how you interact with the Bitcoin protocol, but that permeates into many other things as well.
But Dan, I'm gonna challenge you on this. So is that only for people who invest in Bitcoin or support Bitcoin? Because you could draw the same conclusions about other assets or new developments in technology and finance. Where does Bitcoin stand out there for you?
Yeah, the last time I checked, there's no stacking sats meme for any other crypto product. Stacking sats is a savings meme. So it reinforces the idea that you should save some percentage of your paycheck in Bitcoin. But again, I think that philosophy permeates into many other things around saving is a good virtuous act, which it is. And it's necessary for an economy to work. So I don't really see that meme propagating in other crypto circles. I think when we look at Bitcoin's code as well, so if we dig into the product, Silicon Valley, when we build products out here, it's all about building the MVP when you first start out. It's the minimum viable product. And it's really about fighting the disease of putting more into your product. You're trying to build the most minimum viable product to succeed. And Bitcoin's community and core development team have been focused on the most efficient, minimal protocol in order for Bitcoin to run. That's why Bitcoin's core development team is so focused on people being able to run their own full node. That's why we can't have block sizes of 1 gigabyte or something much, much larger. That would then make it impossible for individual users to verify the Bitcoin blockchain in its entirety themselves, which is a core component of being free, not having to trust a third party. And so when we look at whether it be developers, the security of Bitcoin, if we look at, the minimalist philosophy applied to proof of work, the largest proof of work chain will accrue most of the security spend in proof of work chains. So really there's only one proof of work chain that's worth anyone's consideration. With developers, working with only one protocol makes a lot more sense than working with thousands, which is impossible. And then, with the code, Satoshi has a non-Turing complete language, so it can provide predictable outcomes and facilitate trust minimization. And so, really Bitcoin minimalism was woven into the code from day one. And that has been propagated through more cultural values going to HODL or stack sats. So I think it's unique for just Bitcoin. I don't think this is really a philosophy that many other groups have.
All right, and you do wrap up your blog post in drawing attention and pointing out that Bitcoin minimalism is rooted in a libertarian philosophy. We want to expand on that, just where that thinking draws from?
Yeah, absolutely. So a government should be a minimalist system that protects individuals from the threat of physical violence and enforce contract and property law. By separating the monopoly of money from the state, we are guaranteed that any seizure of wealth must be through direct taxation rather than through silent or deficit spending. So Bitcoin minimalism is really tied to the idea is rooted in libertarian ideology around a minimalist state, a minimalist government, a minimalist tax structure. Capital should be effectively allocated through individuals and corporations who know how to allocate it and who have skin in the game, rather than bureaucrats who absorb large amounts of capital through taxation and then reallocate that very ineffectively. So Bitcoin minimalism is tied directly to libertarian ideologies, which is about reducing spend, reducing governments. As Thoreau says, government is best which governs least.
Fantastic quote and very, very apt. So the next topic, maybe we can find a nice segue here. We've been looking at the markets the last few days. Volumes are low. When you're reading through crypto news sites and blogs, I think you say it best. There's a sense of crypto market fatigue, and it might have to do with the recent news and developments around China that seems to have fallen down a bit. There was all this lead up to things like the launch of Backed, and that's kind of gone past already. What's your sense? I mean, you're living this market day in and day out, the community. Where does it come from? Where is that feeling justified? And if so, why is it? Where is it coming from?
Yeah, so I had this feeling a few weeks ago, and I actually tweeted this out. And it was funny because I tweeted it out, and I didn't really think a lot of people would agree with me. But that's what's so fun about Twitter is that you can put out your ideas and see how it resonates with different people. So I tweeted out, I feel like the crypto markets are fatigued. And I had, I think it was like 500 people like the tweet, and I had like, I think like 50 to 100 comments. And a lot of people seem to feel the same way. And so that reinforced my opinion at the time, which was that, with this sideways chop action, with kind of the lack of just that energy, that vibe in the space, that we're currently undergoing a cycle that Bitcoin has done many times. It's just this kind of like boring period before the next bull run. And I think it's a necessary period to really, kind of sift out the rest of the individuals who aren't really into this. If you're not super into Bitcoin, if you're not into crypto, this is the time where it gets really boring and you just have to go build and wait for the next market cycle to happen. Waiting for that next market cycle can be rather boring or rather tiring. And so I just felt like that was kind of the aggregate sentiment in the space. And it sounded like that resonated really well with a lot of people that follow me on Twitter.
Yeah.
And I think we're kind of seeing that reflected in the price action. We went up to 10.5 thousand, Bitcoin went to 10,500. It's now back down to 8,000. A lot of the alts are bleeding much harder. And, right now it really tests conviction. As a hodler of one of these crypto assets, do you truly believe? The Bitcoin believers are the most, stringent believers. They're the ones who are going to believe through anything. And they have through a couple market cycles. And so you have to think, are the holders of your altcoin, are they as convicted as Bitcoiners? Because the only floor to the prices of any of these crypto assets are the believers who are willing to buy the bottom or buy the dip.
Right. Now, you recently attended Consensus Invest in New York. Consensus events are always a magnet to the who's who and really the entire industry. And Invest, probably more for the institutional investors. What was the sense? Was it the same feeling there?
Yeah, so we, at Kraken, we view Consensus Invest as a really important conference. And so we sent out a couple of BD team members. When I go to conferences, I spend a lot of the day going and having meetings, and then at night going out and doing happy hours and dinners, so to better connect with different individuals in the space. And, I think the events at night were still energized. I think kind of the who's who of the space, the executive levels, like a lot of these individuals have been through this before, so they're not feeling the fatigue as much, or they recognize the fatigue and work through it. But I think the general atmosphere of the conference was a little subdued. I've been to Consensus Invest in 2018 and 2017. Now, of course, 2017 was quite
Sure.
crazy, right? But 2018 was still a bit more energized than this. And so I think that kind of reinforced again that my feeling of crypto fatigue, or my feeling of the industry having crypto fatigue, was right. And so, I think this is, like I said before, a classic market cycle right before we begin a new one. It's this long sideways chop period. And if we look at previous historical market cycles, this occurs every time. It's kind of a period of, the separation between true believers and non-believers.
All right, so a lot of interesting stuff to take with us. We talked about Bitcoin minimalism and that philosophy that contains, and a bit about crypto fatigue. And you're saying, just hang on in there. The bull run is going to come, and the energy is going to come back, and there's reasons for optimism. Dan,
HODL.
And yeah, HODL on. I mean that's in the name. Thank you very much for joining us again this week. We'll be back again very soon. For those of you watching at home, don't go anywhere. We're going to be back with more crypto and blockchain related news in just a minute.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.